Are you ready to unlock your full potential and maximize your productivity? Look no further than Productivity Smarts, the ultimate audio podcast hosted by renowned productivity expert Gerald J. Leonard. In every episode, Gerald shares captivating stories, invaluable tips, and cutting-edge strategies that will transform the way you approach productivity. Whether you're looking to reduce stress, overcome overwhelm, or simply get more done in less time, Productivity Smarts has got you covered. But that's not all. You'll also gain inspiration from real-life success stories of individuals who have achieved greatness through productivity. Plus, you'll learn the latest tools, techniques, and habits that will help you achieve a new level of happiness and fulfillment in your personal and professional life. So why wait? Join us every week as we delve into the exciting world of productivity and help you unleash your full potential. Get ready to take your productivity to the next level with Productivity Smarts. As a productivity expert and host of the Productivity Smarts podcast, Gerald J. Leonard has been a proud supporter of Kiva since 2011. Kiva is a non-profit organization that helps entrepreneurs in third world countries access the capital they need to start or grow their businesses. By making a small loan through Kiva, you can help these entrepreneurs achieve their dreams, support their families, and contribute to their local economies. And with a repayment rate of over 96%, your loan can be re-lent to another entrepreneur once it's repaid, creating a ripple effect of positive change. So if you're looking for a meaningful way to make a difference in the world, consider making a loan through Kiva. With loans as small as $25, anyone can be a micro-lender and help change lives. Visit kiva.org to learn more and start lending today.
Today, I have with me Dr. Dianne Olvera. She has worked as an international diplomat, a spy, an educator, a professor, a brain researcher, and a clinician for over 4 decades. Her doctoral degrees in bilingual special education, language, and cultural differences are based on research and practice highlighting language's power. This proven effective strategy transformed the lives of everyone who uses them. Wow, what a powerful statement. Thank you so much for joining me on the Productivity Smarts podcast.
Well, it's so nice to be here with you. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent, excellent. Now, as I said earlier, I always ask a couple of questions up front, and that is, what is your favorite style of music?
Oh my goodness, I love jazz. I love music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, rock and roll. And I love current music. You know, I think I just, everything resonates. Just the power of music and the power of their words.
Excellent. Can you share a piece of music that really inspires you or resonates with you deeply?
Oh, goodness. I'm trying to think of who sang it. You'll Never Find. And it was probably in the 70s, but I can't remember.
That's okay.
Have me lost on that one. Yeah. It was a song that actually pulled me through a very bad marriage. I was living in Argentina at the time, and I was married to an Argentine.
Right.
Yeah. So it was kind of my anger, and his words were just beautiful. Like, yeah.
Well, you know, music has a way of doing that. It catches us at a time, especially the songs that we remember. There's always an emotional component to it. And when we hear that song, the challenge is it always begins to take us back to that place where we were because it's so tied in with emotions. Now, you've done some amazing things. And obviously, you know, it looks like you have 2 doctorate degrees in bilingual education and all these other amazing things. How did you get started in your industry, and what do you think has made you so successful throughout your career?
Well, I started out as a diplomat. I mean, my parents actually were very strict. They wouldn't let us talk, and they made all our decisions.
Right.
So I was completely unprepared for the real world. And matter of fact, if I did talk, I would get freshly soaked soap slid behind my protruding front teeth.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. That's a wonder they didn't call me Bubbles. If that didn't work, well, I got the belt. I got the wooden spoon. I mean, it was pretty drastic. But then I became a stewardess for TWA.
Oh, wow.
And one day I knocked a man's tooth out with my hip as we were getting ready to land at the Indianapolis 500. This is when they still had real forks.
Yes.
And I know my flying partner didn't know what to do. So what did I do? I ran up to the cockpit, flung open the door, and said to the captain, "Hey, you can't land yet because I just knocked a man's tooth out with my hip." And he said, "Don't worry, honey. Just pick up the trays. We're going to land. We'll talk about it later." So when we landed, everybody got off the airplane, and there was an ambulance at the bottom of the stairs, and
Right.
he told me to get in. So I got in, and I said, "I'm so sorry. What did I do?" And he said, "Oh, no, we just thought it was the funniest thing in the world to have the only stewardess that can knock men's teeth out with her hip." So we radioed down to the tower, and they thought it was so funny. They gave us a ride in the Goodyear blimp. Yeah. So when it was a turnaround. So when I got back on, everybody was on the airplane, and of course, as I got halfway down the aisle, what did he do? He told everybody to be careful because I could knock their teeth out with my hip.
You can knock your teeth out with the hip.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Wow, what a story.
Well, it was sad to say it was true, but that opened my eyes.
Yeah.
It opened my eyes to how impulsive innocence could have actually even caused a plane crash. So then when I got to Argentina, married and divorced down there, and married my diplomat husband, I couldn't do things like that. I had to be very, very careful. And
Yeah.
it was at a time when Argentina was going through the desaparecidos. They were killing people for just speaking against the government.
Right.
And so we had to be very tactful, very, very, very careful about where we went, how we went there. It was very dangerous.
Right.
And then from there we went to Mexico, and it was still dangerous. So
Yeah. Some of those places are pretty sketchy, are pretty scary to go to. But I find that you stepping to them with with good thoughts and good, and you're aware of your environment, that you do pretty well, even with all of that going on. So.
Well, that was where society taught me the lessons. And I had to learn very quickly to stand up for my rights and to talk,
Right.
Learn how to talk. But then I kept thinking there has to be more to this.
Right.
That's why I spent 12 years in graduate school, going for my first doctorate in bilingual special education. And then my second one was in cultural differences, because I wanted to know, what is the impact of language on people?
That's fascinating. The impact of language on individuals. It's interesting because my wife and I, we love to travel internationally. We just got back from Rome, and I learned to speak a little bit of Italian, and it's awesome now because you have the different translation tools that are AI based. So it's easy to kind of say something in English and it translates it right away, and it can hear from the other person and translate it in your language. But I noticed in that environment, you learn more of the language. But even with a little bit of Latin that I learn, just the phrasing or the way that you say things, they get the idea. Or even if you don't know the word and you say it in English, the way you're saying it, they get it, right? They get what you're trying to accomplish. And just the power of language and communication. And it's seeming today that AI is beginning to kind of virtually create the Tower of Babel, where we can begin to communicate and connect with each other across the globe. So I thought that's fascinating. But I just was taken by your statement, how language impacts culture, because it does.
Yeah, when you opened up a very interesting door with your commentary, because that's where I learned in Latin America is where I learned open conversations. When I first got there, when I was first married to my Argentine husband, people would come up. First of all, they'd hug me, which I wasn't accustomed to.
Right.
And then the second thing, they would tell me to my face what they thought of me. I mean, at first, you kind of want to crawl into a hole,
Right.
but then you realize they really care about me because
Yes.
they don't want me to look like the ugly American in their country.
Yeah.
They wanted me to be accepted. So they told me to my face. And I never forgot about that. And that's why I wanted to study what does open conversations,
Right.
the purity of our thoughts, do to enhance relationships.
Right. And that really proves to the book that you wrote, The Power of Connection. And I
Mhm.
love that title because connecting, you talk with different examples about eye contact and the importance of eye contact and the way we talk to each other and so on. And so let me just ask you this, like, what was your core motivation for writing the book?
It was to bring connection between all individuals.
Mm,
I would get very frustrated when we were isolating because of culture,
right,
because of a disability.
right,
And I literally have turned autistic kids around. They are productive. They're married. They have kids.
right,
They're, they have their own businesses. Just because they had an autism identification did not mean that they were dumb. On the contrary,
right,
these children were so amazing. And I'm so passionate about this because today I'm finding that in business and in university settings, our children do not have self awareness.
right,
And actually, I was teaching a graduate level course, I was teaching law. And I just said, okay, I don't want to know your name, where you're from. I want you to tell me about you. Not one person in my graduate course could tell me anything about who they were. Who am I? What can I do?
right,
Where are my powers? And so that scared me. Now, as I'm doing more and more of this work, I'm finding more of you all that are into entrepreneurship, that are into businesses. You're finding the same thing.
yeah,
And what do you do when you have like 5 generations of people
that work
working
in your
under
company.
you?
Yeah,
Yeah, in one company.
yeah,
And how do you keep everyone comfortable in that one domain, even though they have differing ideas about how things should be run?
right. It's a really important question. It's a very important concept. I think storytelling has a big part of that, can really help with that because stories cross generational gaps,
Yeah.
right? There's all different types of archetypes inside of stories, but stories are able to bridge that gap. But I want to jump into your book because, again, I found it to be a wonderful read. And it's a very powerful book. And again, I love the title, The Power of Connection. So in your book, you emphasize being felt and the power of nuance. How does this concept influence productivity, especially in workplace relationships?
We have forgotten our awareness. When you broaden your awareness, you actually notice when somebody looks at you, and you also notice when they don't look at you.
Right,
And so you don't feel felt. You're sitting at a meeting and or everybody's there, you're sitting at a table. Everybody gets a look, but you don't. You weren't felt.
right,
And it makes you feel isolated.
right,
Even though you are very powerful in yourself and very confident, you weren't felt. And so when we start to open our awareness and we permit ourselves to look at each other and see that there's a soul, there's a person there in front of me that has such a beauty that I got to find out how much more I can find out.
right, right.
We find the beauty because we all have differences.
Yes,
But let's say you are very loquacious. You're speaking. You have a wonderful way of speaking, and yet you can come across to people in a very kind way. But you might have somebody beside you who is very visual
right,
and he doesn't speak a lot. How do I connect these two guys together? But when I realize the beauty that each of you have, and I point it out to you, I start that sense of awareness.
right.
And so now you become that aware person of, I am powerful in this area. I am powerful in my area. And
Right.
when we get them together, they really, really thrive.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's really important for, again, I'll go back to the title of the book, The Power of Connection, because I believe that we were created for connection, right? There's the good book says it's not good for man to be alone.
You're right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that means that because we all need to be connected. And when you're alone, you're left with your thoughts.
Mhm.
And we have the hurts from our past, the different disappointments and limiting beliefs and all the things that are there. We start hearing all of these different stories and thoughts. And we need to be connected with other people to not be just inundated with our own thinking.
Yeah.
And I think that is really, really important. And that takes me to the next thing that I mentioned earlier, but you mentioned eye contact,
Mhm.
right? Judith Glaser, who passed away, that I studied with her in areas of neuroscience,
Mhm.
her book Conversational Intelligence talked about that when we first start having a conversation with someone, that within 0.07 seconds we know whether we can trust the person or not because it's at an unconscious level. But I think through the eyes, right, that in our eyes we have rods and cones. Our cones see a very limited amount that we consciously take in, but our rods, which is our peripheral vision, and takes in millions of data points that we are not even aware of consciously, but it brings up intuition. And
Yeah.
so it makes me think about your comment about eye contact.
Mhm.
We're seeing consciously, but we're also taking in information non-consciously about the person we're talking to because of that, because of the way our eyes are made and how they connect to our brains. So, how does eye contact create an energy of engagement based on what you've studied? And how can being mindful of our nonverbal cues improve either team dynamics in our work and in our effectiveness at work?
Yeah, I used this a lot when we were diplomats and spies because how I wanted the conversation to go was based on how I used my eyes. And if someone was delving too much into my life and information I was not permitted to share,
Right.
I would lower my eyes as they were speaking. And when I was given an opportunity to speak, I would raise my eyes, look that person directly in the eye, and say, "We're done. I have to leave now," and walk away.
Wow.
Now, how does that work in the workplace? When you have a new person that comes in, if you remember to just, without staring at them, just look them in the eye and say, "Hey, welcome. I'm really glad you're here."
Right.
And then let them do their work. If they have a question, look at them. Now, you have older employees that you've become so accustomed to that you forget to use eye contact.
Right.
And so they don't feel felt. It's almost like a marriage. After 30, 40 years, what happens? We forget to feel felt. But you can literally turn negative relationships or relationships that have gone cold within a week. You can turn that whole relationship, that whole office around
We're just
by
eye
just
contact.
learning how to use your eyes.
What's the science behind that? What is like, I know I talked about the rods and cones and the conscious, and unconscious, but from your perspective, what's the science behind that? Because that's intriguing to me.
Right. Our eyes are the electrical system of our body. I mean, you can be sitting someplace, and I actually had my students do this. And I had a group, stand with their backs to the wall,
Yep.
and the others were looking at their backs. and we chose one person that we were going to stare at. And then we would tell everybody the guys to turn around. And then I'd say, okay, who felt like they were being stared at? And the person that would go, and they'd raise their hand because they felt that electrical connection. They didn't know why, they didn't know who, but they felt the connection. And our eyes are electrical, and how we use them, it can be enticing. You go to a bar and you want to meet this girl, and what do? You give her enticing reflections in your eyes. You come home and your kids are being naughty. What do?
Give them a look.
Yeah, give them the look. That's right. And grandmothers always gave them the look, or mom.
You just took me back when I was a kid. I got the look.
And you got the look in your eye, too. It was so cute. I could see you being like 12 or 14 again.
I didn't do it.
She did that, yeah. Yeah. Well, even words. I mean, like there was one guy whose teacher said, that was a stupid thing to say. I got him 5 years later in a private conversation. He kept saying, this is stupid. Everybody's stupid. My work is stupid. And then finally one day I said, hey, what is stupid to you? Because this is like a word that you keep tagging on.
Right.
And then he thought for a second. He said, oh, my God. It was that stupid teacher that said, hey, that was a stupid thing to do. He carried it in his heart
right.
for years because he felt stupid.
Yeah.
So it's the power of your words also, beside the power of your eyes. She
Yes.
could have looked at him along with making that comment that made him feel doubly worse.
Right. Now, one of the things that, that kind of drives me to my next point of speech patterns, right?
Oh, yeah.
Positive or negative, that you talk about in your book, and the impact that it has. And again, in my learnings, especially in the book Conversational Intelligence, and in your book, The Power of Connections, the thing I've gleaned from that is that our words, one, they create our world. And communication, this is one core principle I live by that I've learned through the studying, and is that communication is much more than just verbal, it's chemical.
Yeah.
Because I love the way you're wearing your hair, I love your glasses, and so on and so forth. Well, that's creating a positive neurochemistry. It's a compliment, and so on and so forth. But kind of like what you were saying earlier, if someone looks at you and looks away and goes, "That's stupid," you're like, "Wait a minute." So now it creates a negative feel, but that positive feeling is positive neurochemicals. That's why we feel positive. Like oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. The negative feelings create the cortisol and adrenaline and that tenseness that we feel from negative words. Just from your perspective, patterns of speech, how does that impact an organization or a family or a group of people?
You're not going to believe this. Negative speech patterns usually start out as a joke.
I can believe that.
So, you got a bunch of guys, they're high rollers, they're, very top of their field.
Right.
They go out and having lunch together. Oh, yeah, there's George over there. Yep. Man, his pockets are so deep that he never can find his wallet when it comes time to check out. See, you're laughing.
Yeah.
And we're all laughing. But then the next time we get back to the office, oh, there's George. And then, hey, nobody put paper in the copy machine. Yeah, George with the heavy pockets or the big pockets. It's funny, but then that little negative gesture starts permeating the whole group. And look at you, Jerry. What about you? And you can't even afford a pencil on your desk, and you always have to rob mine. So pretty soon, the whole office dynamic starts going into demeaning relationships.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting because it starts off as a lighthearted, this is just going to be for fun, but it begins to take its toll because then it crosses a line somewhere.
Yeah.
We don't know where
But
that,
you don't realize it.
but it crosses that line, and then it becomes a part of the culture of that clique or that group of people.
So how can we change the dynamics is open our awareness.
Right.
It's almost like having a little checklist. You want to turn a company around? It sounds stupid, but say, I want to hear your speech patterns. And you start having them check off the things that you are noticing or that they're noticing.
Right.
And then you say, okay, I've got a challenge for you. For one solid week, every time you hear yourself say that, turn it around, flip it, and just catch yourself. Oh man, I'm sorry. No, no, you're cool. I love you. You may not want to pay for the bill when we go out to lunch, but my goodness, you have a whole drawer full of pens and pencils, and I love it. Just something cute, something funny. But
Right.
we're starting to flip
Right.
the patterns of conversation. And pretty soon we start flipping it to the positive.
Right.
Now you're going to need this more when the neurodiverse people come into your office. They don't catch these little nuances in conversations or in even eye contact.
You mentioned neurodiversity and neurodivergent. Probably a few people that are listening may not know what that is. When you say neurodivergent or gifted individuals, what does that mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, those are people that have been possibly diagnosed as using different areas of the brain than the norm.
Right.
So most people use their verbal side of their brain and their perceptual side of their brain. An autistic person might be very verbal, but they don't always see social nuances.
Right.
And so if you look at them, you might make them feel uncomfortable. So you need to be very careful of how you do use eye contact. And if they don't look back at you, you really want them to feel comfortable and use your words.
Right.
Hey, I like the way you made that spreadsheet today. That's exactly what we need here. Good going. And being specific of what is good and what is maybe what you do want to have changed. Good doesn't mean anything. And that's where we're all lacking self-awareness.
Right.
Walk into the office and you say, hey, good job on that presentation. So the guy walks away and goes, okay, so what was good? Was it the color schemes? Was it the verbiage? What did he really like? As you start pointing out specific things that you like or what may need to be changed, guess what you get? You get self-awareness.
Yeah. Now they're connecting good with a specific attribute of the presentation or what they did. So now they can own it, and it's allowing them to become much more aware of what was good and maybe what needs some additional work, or if you will.
That's a good point. So self-awareness improves self-confidence.
Okay.
Which then improves their ability to be their self-esteem.
Right.
And then once you improve your self-esteem, you feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
So guess what we get at the end? Open conversations.
Yeah.
See? So it's like, Gerald, I love this, but have you thought about that? And then you're not going to feel badly because I'm talking about something negative that we may need to change or improve because you know how good you are in all these other things.
Right.
But when you have no self-esteem or no self-awareness, I could say that you're even the best person in the whole wide world. But I make one little comment that could impede and make you feel a little uncomfortable. You immediately, your world falls in. This is what's happening with our kids today.
Yeah. 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 They need to have that, again, that connection, and that connection creates that genuineness. And when you are, and also, whether it's rules of engagement or ways of communicating, but I think, and I like what you're saying about the awareness, that when you have a relationship where you're both aware of the reality of where you are, and you can work together and you accept each other's, each person's not perfect. There's flaws, but you accept them. You're aware of them, but each person also is bringing good to the table. That's a healthy relationship, whether it's
Right.
in marriage or in work or in whatever environment, social network or a work environment or whatever. That becomes a really healthy relationship because you are, again, aware, but you're also complementary towards each other.
Complementary to the specifics.
Yes.
And stop telling everybody what to do.
Right.
And that's no, it brings you down.
Yeah,
It takes away your power. And
Yes.
then you go home tired because you had to tell everybody 15 times what to do.
Right.
You get the whole group together, and like you were saying, you define the dynamics. This is what we're going to do on this project. What are the repercussions if we don't get it done on time?
Right.
And then what would be the repercussions per person if that isn't completed? Now
Right.
you know everything's set, and so we are at par. And then when something doesn't go the way it's supposed to, you're supposed to have that on my desk at 9:15. If you don't, we're not going to get this project in on time.
Right.
So I'm going to ask you to stay in at lunch. And you already know that that's going to be the repercussion of work that's not completed. Okay, so what do you need to do? If you don't have it in at 9:15, what do you need to do at lunchtime? I got to stay at my desk. Cool.
Right.
The guy knows what he's supposed to do. He's already redefined self.
Right.
And he has redefined what does he need to do. The responsibility goes back on him, not on you.
Right.
You don't work so hard.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
And it does make life easy when you're
Yes.
able to do that and have those kind of conversations. Now, you also talk about this concept of ask, don't tell philosophy, and I find that intriguing. How does the model promote this model of ask, don't tell, promote self-leadership and intrinsic motivation in high-performing environments?
Well, just like I pointed out that, he knew or she knew that if his work wasn't on the desk at 9:15, that person was going to have to stay in at lunchtime.
Right.
Okay, so you walk up to him and say, hey, what do you need to do? I got to stay at lunchtime. Hey, thanks a lot. You don't get mad. You don't give him the angry look. You give him thanks. Now that you have just empowered that person because they made their own decision, they fixed their own problem, and they have been accepted by you because you're not mad and you looked at him with kind eyes. Now you've empowered him.
Exactly. And that's kind of along the lines of what you talk about in your book around naming behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, what we had mentioned before, it's like if you say that was a good paper you wrote.
Okay.
I love the way you and I are speaking because you are being specific. I like the title. I am intrigued by asking. I am wondering about eyes. So now what you're doing is you're making my life easy because your brain is permitting my brain to now become interconnected. So it's the words you don't use that are the words that get you into trouble.
Right.
How often does the boss walk out of the room when they get halfway into a conversation and they're pretty upset? They walk out. You're not getting anything done. What about when your wife walks out or your husband walks out? Oh, whatever. I don't care. Well, it's the words you didn't use that everybody starts ruminating by themselves, and they start thinking about what they should have said, what they could have said, and what they don't want to do. They don't want that person in their life anymore.
Right. Well, they start telling themselves, they start filling in the blanks.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we do. We fill in the blanks and we start telling ourselves a story based on the emotions that we feel from that interaction.
That was so good. Awesome.
We have positive feelings. We start telling ourselves, oh, he really likes me, or she really likes me, or oh, this is, whatever. But if we have a negative feeling, it's like, really? Can you believe he just the nerve? And then the story. Then next thing you know, you've gone down this rabbit hole, and you are feeling whatever. And that might not even be the case of what this person is going through or feeling, but because of the lack of specificity and the words that were not used, as you're saying, it creates this void, and our brains don't like the void. Our brains
he doesn't
want
like me, and I don't like him. So, forget it. I don't care whether I get my work done or not. He can just go wherever he wants to go because I don't care.
Exactly. And then that creates, and if that happens over and over in a work environment or a relationship, it creates dysfunction and, just a downward spiral. But as you're saying in our conversation, the opposite is also true.
Right.
That we are a lot more specific in our conversation. We're a lot more articulate in what we are feeling. We look with our eyes, we engage. Then the relationship becomes an upward spiral that gets closer, it gets better over time. And the fallacy that, well, these things don't last. Well, they can if you work at them and if you know how to work at them.
Right. And so if you were the boss and you start using specific words,
right,
guess what? You created speech patterns. And I'm going to walk in and say, hey, boss, I really appreciate you not pointing out the fact that I didn't get my stuff in at 9:15. And you appreciated what I finally did at lunchtime. Thanks a lot, man. You're cool. So notice what I'm doing. Because you were kind to me in the words that you used, your speech patterns, I now start using my speech patterns to give you pats on the back.
Right.
And so now we become a cohesive working group because we know our strengths and limitations, but we're not afraid to tell you you're great.
Right.
Or, gee, that was when you talk to me like that, man, you sound like you're in a bad mood with me, And now I can open up the conversation and say, yeah, man, I am in a bad mood with you.
Right.
But because you have self-esteem and self-awareness, and we have these positive speech patterns,
You can have that conversation.
tell me the truth. I need to know because I'm not going to do better if you just keep walking away.
Exactly. This is great. I could talk to you all day about this stuff. Again, I really loved your book and just the insights, and you sent me a lot of information up front to kind of make sure I was prepped for everything, and I was very grateful for that. But the book, it's a short book, but it's very conversational, but it gives you a lot of great insights. And I would definitely say, if you're looking to up level your workplace, The Power of Connection is a perfect book. You have the educational and knowledge and background. And I was so intrigued by this idea of being a spy. I can't see you as a spy, but okay, I accept that.
Now you know what to do when the government calls you for duty.
I know who to call now.
No, read the book, man.
Oh, that's so amazing. So let me ask you, where can people learn more about you?
Well, it's my website is drdianneolvera.com.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Dianne Olvera, this has been a pleasure speaking with you. I've had an amazing time. I've learned a ton, and I think it's been an incredibly engaging conversation and a very intriguing conversation with all the different twists and turns, from the double doctorate in linguistics and special education and neurodiversity and brain research. I mean, I could spend hours talking to you because this is up my alley. And so hopefully you feel that as well. And you're walking felt and filled.
I feel wonderful with you. You're such a wonderful interviewer because you make me feel very relaxed and open, so we can have an open conversation.
Excellent.
Well, if you get any feedback or questions, let me know, and then we can answer them if you ever want me to come back on or, chat about what people are asking you.
Sure. Sounds great. Again, thank you so much for being on the Productivity Smarts podcast.
I really appreciate you asking me. Thank you.
If you're enjoying the content and finding it valuable, we would appreciate it if you could take a moment and leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us and helps us reach a wider audience. If you leave us a 5-star review, it would mean the world to us. Not only does it help us improve the podcast, but it also helps us attract more sponsors and grow our community. Thank you again for your support and for listening to the Productivity Smarts podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to Productivity Smarts, where we help you achieve your goals and live your best life. We hope you've gained valuable insights and actionable strategies to boost your productivity and increase your happiness and fulfillment. Remember to apply what you've learned and keep striving towards your goals. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring episodes and expert advice from our host, Gerald J. Leonard. Until next time, keep pushing forward and unleashing your productivity smarts.